There are moments in sports that feel like the breaking point, not just for a team's season, but for the entire identity of a franchise. That moment may have just arrived for the Cleveland Browns. In a revelation that's shaken the entire NFL landscape, Deshaun Watson, the quarterback who was supposed to lead the Browns into a new era of contention, has dropped a bombshell. He will not share the field with Myles Garrett ever again. Let that sink in. Two of the most talented players on the Browns roster, two of the highest paid, two of the supposed cornerstones of the franchise's long-awaited rebuild, and now irreconcilably fractured. This isn't just a locker room disagreement. It's not some minor spat over leadership or play calling or even off-field distractions. This is a full-blown internal meltdown. And for a team that has fought so hard over the past few seasons to shed its image as the NFL's perennial punchline, it's a gut punch that lands deep. You don't come back from this kind of public split without serious repercussions. For the team, the front office, the coaching staff, and the fan base. According to multiple sources close to the situation, the tension between Watson and Garrett has been simmering behind the scenes for months, and now it's boiled over. Watson has allegedly made it clear to Browns management, as long as Myles Garrett is part of this roster, he won't suit up in brown and orange. It's a stunning declaration considering the stakes involved and the players in question. Myles Garrett is the face of the Browns defense, a generational pass rusher, a leader in the locker room, and someone who has, through highs and lows, remained a constant presence for this team. He's a 4-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time All-Pro, and arguably one of the 3 best defensive players in football when healthy. But Deshaun Watson? He's the quarterback, the $230 million man. The franchise's most controversial and financially binding commitment. And now the Browns are being forced into an impossible position. Choose between the heart of your defense and the face of your offense. Between loyalty and investment. Between leadership and leverage. The problem is, there may be no right answer, only fallout. To understand how things got here, you have to rewind the tape. Deshaun Watson's arrival in Cleveland was never clean. The trade itself was polarizing. The fully guaranteed contract, unprecedented. And the off-field baggage that came with him, volcanic. But the Browns believed in his upside. They believed in what he could bring on the field, if he could leave the distractions and rust behind. Meanwhile, Myles Garrett was seen as the steadying presence, the voice that didn't waver through the noise. And perhaps behind closed doors, that dynamic began to fray. While official details of the fallout remain closely guarded, insiders suggest a mix of philosophical clashes and personal disrespect. Watson, reportedly frustrated with how leadership dynamics were evolving, didn't feel supported, not by Garrett and not by some key defensive voices in the locker room. Garrett, meanwhile, is said to have grown increasingly skeptical of Watson's leadership, his preparation, and his accountability. Words were exchanged. Then silence, then division. The locker room, once cautiously united under head coach Kevin Stefanski, is now being pulled apart. And this isn't something that can be fixed by a team meeting or a players-only dinner. This is deeper, more personal. It's trust that's been broken. And in professional sports, especially in football, when trust breaks down between stars, the team cracks with it. Fans are already divided. Some believe Garrett represents the true culture of Cleveland football. Grit, consistency, fire. Others argue that the Browns bet everything on Watson and that they have to stick with that. Investment no matter the internal turbulence. But both sides agree on one thing. This isn't just about one feud. It's about what kind of team the Browns want to be and whether this regime has the strength or even the credibility to make the right decision. The front office, led by General Manager Andrew Berry, is now facing the hardest decision of its tenure. Trading either player would be seismic, moving Garrett would gut the defense and infuriate fans who've stood by him through everything. But moving Watson? That's not just unprecedented, it's financially catastrophic. His fully guaranteed contract is virtually unmovable. The cap implications would cripple the roster for years. But keeping both and pretending things are fine, that's not an option anymore, not after Watson's ultimatum. Not after this rift has become public. What comes next could define the Browns for the next decade. Will they try to mend the bridge? Will ownership step in? Will Stefanski survive? The storm Or are we watching in real time the unraveling of a team that tried to shortcut its way to greatness and paid the price? There's also the human side to all of this. Players are people, and conflict, especially at this level, isn't always clean or easy to manage. Garrett and Watson are both proud, fiercely competitive athletes, but somewhere along the way, respect was lost. And when respect is gone, chemistry follows, wins follow, and before long, what you have left is a shell of a team. Talented on paper, fractured in spirit. We've seen this story before. Great rosters derailed by ego, poor leadership, or a lack of unified vision. But this one stings more for Browns fans because it felt like this was the team. The one that finally had the pieces. The one that had learned from past mistakes. Instead, we're back at square one. Maybe even further back. The offseason hasn't even officially begun, and already the Browns are staring down a catastrophe. Training camp is still months away, but don't be surprised if neither Watson nor Garrett is wearing a Cleveland uniform by then. One may be traded, the other may force his way out. And if the front office isn't decisive and fast, this thing could spiral into something even worse. Total organizational collapse. This isn't just a disagreement between players. This is a test of everything the Browns claim to stand for, of leadership, of values, of identity. And the clock is ticking. Stay tuned. Thanks for riding with us on another Browns Blitz. If you liked the video, share it with a fellow fan, hit subscribe, and ring that bell so you're always part of the Dawg Pound conversation. Go Browns! If you're a die-hard Browns fan and love breaking down the game like we do, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss a blitz. As the NFL world holds its collective breath in anticipation of the 2025 draft, the front offices across the league are already in motion, maneuvering their draft capital like seasoned chess masters plotting their endgames. And just hours before the spectacle officially begins, the Cleveland Browns have made their presence felt in the trade market, executing a quietly calculated yet potentially meaningful pre-draft move with the Houston Texans. While this trade didn't shake the foundations of the first round or involve a blockbuster name, it nonetheless speaks volumes about Cleveland's evolving strategy and their general manager Andrew Berry's deliberate and methodical approach to roster construction. This move consummated just a bit over 2 hours before the Browns were slated to make a monumental selection at number 2 overall, might have flown under the radar for many observers tuned in for first-round fireworks. But for those with a keen eye on the war rooms and their intricate blueprints, this exchange between Cleveland and Houston adds a layer of intrigue to what had already been a dynamic offseason for the Browns. According to a report by Ian Rappaport of NFL Network, subsequently confirmed by multiple outlets, including Cleveland Browns on Sports Illustrated, the Browns opted to relinquish 3-day 3 picks to the Texans in exchange for a pair of 5th-rounders. One immediate, one for the future. Specifically, Cleveland dealt 2 of their 4 6th-round picks, those being pick number unknown 79 and pick number in 216, as well as their lone 7th-round selection, which was scheduled for number 255 overall. In return, they received a 5th-round pick in this year's draft, which comes in at number 166 and another 5th-rounder set for the 2027 NFL Draft. It's a move that, while seemingly modest on paper, adds another layer of flexibility and forward thinking to Berry's overarching plan. It subtly retools the distribution of Cleveland's draft assets without sacrificing valuable day 3 opportunities entirely. Heading into Thursday's festivities, Cleveland was one of the more well-armed franchises in terms of draft capital. They entered the 3-day marathon with 10 total picks, 6 of which were bunched into the final day of action. That volume gave them considerable latitude to wheel and deal, should the opportunity present itself. And clearly it did. Now, following this trade, that number drops to 8 total selections over the course of the weekend. On its face, that reduction might seem counterintuitive, but when you take a closer look, it's clear that the Browns didn't so much reduce their resources as they refined them. This isn't the first time this offseason that Cleveland has shuffled its draft deck in a meaningful way. Earlier in the spring, the Browns were holding on to an additional 5th-round pick acquired from the Detroit Lions as part of the Donovan Peoples-Jones trade executed during the 2023 season. That pick considered a valuable mid-day 3 chip, was subsequently used in a separate trade that sent young quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson to another team and brought in veteran signal caller Kenny Pickett. That transaction was notable not just for the players involved, but for what it signaled about Cleveland's shifting quarterback depth and their appetite for proven experience. At the time, some fans questioned whether sacrificing a promising young passer and a mid-round pick for a veteran with an uncertain ceiling was the right move. But Barry and the front office made it clear that their strategy was rooted in balance, balancing youth with stability, upside with reliability, and that same philosophy appears to be at work in this latest trade with Houston. Rather than clinging to late-round darts that may or may not make the roster, the Browns opted to consolidate some of those picks into higher-value selections. The 5th round, after all, tends to yield a more favorable success rate than the 6th or 7th, and getting a pick at number 166 gives them a real shot at landing a player with genuine upside. What makes this maneuver even more compelling is the subtle shift it triggers in Cleveland's draft timeline. Prior to the deal, the Browns were facing a lengthy gap between their early 4th round selection at number 104 and their next opportunity to pick again at number 179. That's a 75 pick chasm, an eternity in draft terms, where dozens of potential targets could come off the board before Cleveland had a chance to act. Now, thanks to the acquisition of pick number 166, Barry and his staff have shortened that gap considerably. It gives them a presence in the middle rounds that they otherwise would have lacked and positions them to be more nimble as the draft unfolds. Also means that when day 3 arrives, a day often characterized by frenetic pacing and unpredictable runs at certain positions, the Browns will still retain a degree of control over how they fill out the back end of their roster. Even with the reduction from 6 to 4 day 3 picks, Cleveland still holds 2 6th rounders, which could be used to address depth needs, take flyers on athletic developmental prospects, or even parlay into additional trades. The addition of the 2027 5th round pick, while far from immediate in its impact, further underscores Cleveland's commitment to building a sustainable pipeline of talent. It's a nod to the future, an asset that could grow in value depending on how that draft class shapes up over time. There's also the relationship aspect to consider. Deals like this don't just materialize out of thin air. They're the byproducts of continuous dialogue between front offices, of trust built through past dealings, and of shared objectives that can be mutually beneficial. The Browns and Texans have worked together before, and this transaction likely stems from that rapport. For Houston, the trade allows them to stockpile more shots late in the draft, an approach that makes sense for a team looking to add young, cheap talent to a developing roster. For Cleveland, it's about honing their resources and making each selection count a bit more. Looking beyond the mechanics of the trade, this move is emblematic of Andrew Barry's general philosophy as general manager. Since taking the reins in Cleveland, Barry has consistently demonstrated an affinity for strategic asset management. He's not afraid to make moves that may seem minor at the time, but carry larger implications down the line. He plays the long game, ensuring that every pick, every trade, every roster move fits into a broader framework. This pre-draft trade is just the latest example of that mindset in action. Of course, all of this wheeling and dealing ultimately leads back to the big picture, how the Browns will position themselves during the draft itself with a number 2 overall pick in their back pocket and a chance to land a franchise-altering talent. Cleveland's decisions in the later rounds may seem secondary, but championships are often built not just on the marquee picks, but on the value unearthed in the trenches of the draft. By converting 3 lower-value picks into 2 5th-round selections, one now, one later, Barry has given himself a better shot at finding that hidden gem. That key contributor who may not command headlines but can become a foundational piece. As the draft kicks off and teams begin to shape their future, the Browns have already taken a small but significant step in crafting theirs. This trade with Houston, understated though it may be, reflects a front office fully engaged in the process, aware of every detail, and unafraid to make the kind of calculated moves that define successful franchises. Whether it leads to the discovery of a future starter, a dependable role player, or merely sets up another trade down the road, it's the kind of maneuver that reminds everyone Championships aren't won in April, but smart franchises make. Sure, the seeds are planted then, and Cleveland just did exactly that. Enjoying the content so far? Smash that like button and drop your take in the comments. We want to hear what you think about the Browns this season.